Hey guys, so I don't really know how to start this video, but my biggest dream has come true because of you guys. I have created my very own eyeshadow palette with Sigma Beauty. So let me introduce you to the Sigma and Angela Bright eyeshadow palette. Wow, that feels so weird to say on camera. I cannot stop smiling, oh my gosh. So in this video, we're gonna be talking all about my eyeshadow palette. We're gonna go over the shades, the shade names, we're gonna do some swatches. I'm also gonna give you some swatch color combinations and just everything about this palette. Before we dive into everything, this palette is available now on Sigma's website. It is $50 and you get 14 shades. I also wanted to mention that my Sigma Favorites brush set, the new version of it, is finally back in stock as well. And Sigma's also offering a bundle where you can get my palette and brush set together for a discounted rate. And I wanted to let you know that any influencer code, whether it's my code or someone else's, will not work on this collab. But if you're shopping on Sigma's website and you find something else you want to pick up, maybe another brush or some makeup products, the code AngelaBright20 will save you 20% off of those items. Sigma is also offering some gift with purchases, whether you purchase my palette, the brush set, or the bundle. So if you purchase one of those three things, the first 300 orders will get a free Sigma switch, which is amazing. I use this pretty much every single time I do my eyeshadow. What it is it's a way to get the pigment off of your eyeshadow brush if you're switching between shades, which is helpful because there are some colorful shades in my palette. So I'm super happy that they're offering this with the first 300 orders, and then after that, if you purchase any of those three things, like I said, you'll get a free mini E55 brush. Of course, I'll be linking everything down below, the palette, the brushes, the prices as well, so all the information you need will be in the description box. So before we get into this palette, I want to get a little sappy really quick, and I just want to take a second to say thank you to you guys. This palette would have not been possible without you watching my videos over all these years on YouTube. I've been posting eyeshadow tutorials since 2016, and for the past couple years or so, I get comments all the time being like, Angela, when are you coming out with a palette? And so many people wanted to see a palette with Sigma just because I love Sigma, I love the brand, I love the people behind it, the quality of their products is amazing. And so we actually started working on this palette in 2021, so I've been keeping this a secret from you guys. I just want to say thank you though. Thank you for being a subscriber. Thank you for watching my videos. Just thank you for being here. Like, I wouldn't be here without you guys, and that's the truth, you know? So thank you for making my biggest dream come true, because ever since I started, you know, really getting in on eyeshadow tutorials, it's always been my dream of doing an eyeshadow palette. Like, that was kind of like my influencer dream, you know? People would be like, oh, like, what are your goals of being an influencer? And one of my goals was to make an eyeshadow palette. So it's finally here! All right, so let's dig into this palette, and first I'm just going to start with the outer packaging. This is the box that it comes in. It says Sigma X Angela Bright Eyeshadow Palette. It has this kind of like shifty, holographic, oil slick kind of shift to it, and then on the back of the box you have a nice little quote from me and all the swatches of the shades. So let's pop this baby open, shall we? So again, here is the palette. Again, has that beautiful just shift to it. I just love how this looks, especially like with the lights on the camera. I can't stop looking at the colors it shows. And I wanted the size of my palette to just be kind of small and simple. Like I wanted you to be able to just store this nicely with your other palettes. I personally store my palettes kind of behind me on the lower part of the shelf, and I stack them all up kind of like books. And so I like my palettes to look nice like that. And so it's fun to see mine blended in with my other palettes. And then on the back of the palette, we just have a hashtag, is Sigma X Angela Bright. So that's how I want to see your looks with my palette, whether you're posting on like Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. Use that hashtag so I can see the looks that you create. And then of course, swatches on the back as well. And then you open up the palette and there is a little insert in here that falls off. Again, Sigma X Angela Bright. My name is literally all over this palette. It's kind of crazy. And here are the shades inside. So in my palette, we have 14 shades ranging from neutrals to colors, of course. So I'm gonna start by swatching all these shades for you, going over the shade names and kind of why I picked the colors and just all the good stuff about the shades, because that's the important part, right? All right, so let's start with some swatches. I wanted to do live swatches for you so you can really see these shades kind of in action. Starting with the first shade in the palette, this is Bright. So Bright is an alabaster shimmer. This shade for me is like the perfect highlight shade for my inner corner and my brow bone. It's also really pretty. It's just like a light wash all over the lid. I'm gonna go in and out of frame here for a second, but it's funny because years ago I had this subscriber. I don't remember her name, but if you still watch my channel, you know who you are. Please tell me if this is you. I had this one subscriber who was like, if you ever make an eyeshadow palette, you have to name the highlight shade Bright. And she's like, I'll be waiting for it. And so this is for her. Like, this is for my subscribers. Like, you guys made this possible. So it was just kind of fun going off of her idea that she made that comment years ago before we ever started talking about this palette. I knew that in my head, the highlight shade would be called Bright. Simple as that. Now we have the shade Basic. I'm gonna go over that just to get rid of the powderiness. So I wanted a shade in my palette that was like my perfect transition shade, whether I'm doing like a really intense look or just want a basic shade all over my crease. And that's exactly why it's called Basic. Like, it's my basic transition shade. The next shade is called 2015. I'm gonna go over that just to make it nice and smooth. So 2015 is an Electric Violet Shimmer. So I named the shade 2015 because that was a year that I really started taking Instagram seriously with posting my eyeshadow looks. In case you didn't know, I kind of started my eyeshadow looks on Instagram and then went onto YouTube to do tutorials because people on Instagram were like, we want to see how you're doing this. And the reason why 2015 is this bright purple shade is because back in that year, purple was my favorite color to wear on my eyes. I was that girl in high school that always had some like purple eyeshadow look on. I love purple just on like my lower lash line. I also had purple hair that was literally this color at one point. I will pop up a picture. So like this purple is one of my favorite shades, and like this shade means a lot to me. And this shade just kind of makes me think of my younger self and who I was in 2015. And like, if you told 2015 me that I would have an eyeshadow palette with Sigma Beauty, I wouldn't believe you. So this shade is special to me. It's kind of like, it's a personal shade, you know, but it's such a fun purple. Next we have the shade PDX, which is a beautiful kind of peacock blue matte. I love using this shade to deepen up looks or even use as a fun eyeliner. And of course I had to name the bluish shade of my palette PDX because I grew up in Portland. I've lived here pretty much my whole life. Next we have the shade Hollywood, which is like a yellowy green shimmer. If you watch my videos, you know that whenever a palette has a shade like this in it, I just have to use it. I love this kind of shade. It's just so fun and kind of different, but I honestly believe that this shade goes with any other shade in the palette. It's just a fun way to kind of spice up looks, whether you have a neutral look or a colorful look on. And this shade has a special meaning to me too, because this shade is named after my boyfriend. Hollywood was actually like his nickname growing up. It's kind of what his friends call him because of his last name. And my boyfriend is just such a special person in my life. And this palette also wouldn't have happened without him. Ever since like the day we met on Tinder, by the way. We've been together for almost 3 years now. Anyways, we met on Tinder, and like the first time we ever met, he was always so supportive of what I do. He pushes me to be my best. He helps me with business stuff, ideas, and he's just the best. Like, my boyfriend really is like my #1 fan and my biggest supporter. So after I picked all the shades for my palette, I told him to name a shade. I said, pick your favorite shade and we're gonna name it Hollywood because like you deserve that. So I love him. This shade is for him. Next we have the shade Peachy, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like. Peachy is just kind of like a good old light salmon peachy matte. I love pairing peachy with like the browns in the palette or even more of the purpley shades. It's also really pretty just as like a light wash in the crease, kind of more for like a summery look. There's really not any meaning behind this name. Like, it's peachy. Like, that's exactly what it is. Now we have the shade Autumn, which is like a beautiful, slightly rose brown bronze metallic shade. Obviously I have blue eyes and this shade just looks so good pretty much on any eye color really, but it really does make my blue eyes pop. It is what I'm wearing on my lid today. I love to wear the shade on my lid or even on my lash line for a little pop of kind of like a metallic brown, and I named the shade Autumn because autumn and fall are my favorite season. All right, moving right along, we have the shade Schmoogala. Yes, Schmoogala, and that is a made-up word. So Schmoogala is just a medium warm matte brown. This is just another shade that I needed to have in my palette. Like, I needed to have a medium matte brown. That's just kind of like an obvious, like, it's a given, you know? So you might be thinking, Angela, what the hell is a Schmoogala? Let me tell you. So, you know when you have a pet and you have their real name and their name just slowly turns into other variations of their name? That's what Schmoogala is. So Schmoogala is named after my dog, Rue. So how the name Schmoogala came along is that one time I was at the dog park and this guy was like, oh, what's your dog's name? And I said, Rue. You know, I just kind of like stuttered. I was like, Rue. And he was like, oh, a Rue. And I was like, sure. So then after that day, I kept calling her a Rue, which turned into Arugula, obviously, Arugula, which then turned into Boogala, and then Schmoogala. So It sounds so weird when you're like saying all your dog's different nicknames because people are like, you're weird, right? But yeah, this shade is named after my dog, and it's funny because this brown shade is actually very close to the brown on her coat and her coloring, so I just thought it was fitting. I had to name a shade after my dog, but I didn't want to name it just Rue. Schmoogala is more fun, right? Next we have the shade Champagne Problems, which is a super shimmery, oh, can we even see it? There we go. It's just a beautiful light pink champagne shade. I really wanted this kind of shade in my palette. It is so beautiful over the lid or just paired with any of the other colors really. It also makes a really fun inner corner highlight if you want something a little bit more intense than bright. If you know me, I am a huge Taylor Swift fan. I've been a fan of her since I was young and learning to play the guitar. I was like, I'm gonna be Taylor Swift when I'm older, obviously. But I'm a huge fan of Folklore and Evermore. Those are my two favorite albums from her. So when I made this kind of champagne shade, I was like, Champagne Problems. Duh, easy. And speaking of Taylor Swift, we have another Taylor Swift shade name. This is the shade Evermore. So Evermore is a burnt orange matte, and I really just wanted an orangey shade in my palette to add some warmth to some looks. And I named this shade Evermore because in her album cover photo, this orange is very similar to the orange in her flannel, so that is Evermore. I wish I had some more arm space, but this is the shade Zinfandel. So Zinfandel is a red plum matte. This is another shade that I like to kind of spice up a neutral look with or pair it with the other warmer shades. Once I decided on this shade in my palette, I knew I had to name it something after wine just because it is kind of like a wine color, but I was like, I'm not going to name it wine, that's boring. So I named it Zinfandel, which is a type of wine that I love. I also just love saying Zinfandel. I think it's a really fun name. I also just kind of wanted to name a shade after wine in general because I can't tell you the amount of nights I have worked on this palette, whether it was coming up with shade names, picking out the shades, doing the arrangement of the palette, or just like working on this palette, that I would be listening to Taylor Swift and drinking red wine. I did that for probably a year and a half. All right, I'm gonna skip over my elbow crease right here. We're going over here, and this is the shade Bear. I'm just gonna go over it a few times. So Bear is a pale ivory matte shade, and this is probably my most used shade in the palette. So if you watch my eyeshadow videos, and in any video over the past probably 2 years now where I've said I'm using a skin tone colored shadow to blend it out, but I've never said which shade it is, it's been Bear. Look at the one that, where's my palette? This is the Bear shade I've been using. Look at that pan, look at that giant indent in it. Like, this is definitely my most used shade out of the palette. I love this kind of shadow. I just think it's so important to have a shade to kind of blend out the edges of your eyeshadow to make it blend seamlessly into your skin. So Bear is the perfect shade for that for me and my skin tone. All right, we got 2 shades left and I am on my bicep, but we have the shade Faye. So Faye is kind of like a deep teal, but it has tiny bits of a pink shimmer in it if you look really close. As you can tell, I love my jewel tone shade, so I really wanted to put this shade in the palette. It's just so fun all over the lid. Like, this is a fun shade to work with. I love it. And this shade is named Faye after my 2-year-old niece. She is my only niece / nephew, and she's just the cutest thing in the world, so this is named after her. All right, then for the last shade in my palette, we have the shade Cold Brew, which is a dark umber matte. So as you can see, I didn't put a black in my palette. I went back and forth on that so many times, but I figured we all own black eyeshadows that we love by now, so I wanted to just put a super dark brown in here. This is another shade I use to deepen up my looks, to make like a neutral smoky eye, or also use it as a shadow eyeliner all the time. So these are all 14 shades in my eyeshadow palette. All right, now that you've seen all the shades, we've gone over the swatches and the shade names, let's talk eyeshadow tutorials really quick, because I told you guys, if I were to make a palette, I would be doing like 30 plus tutorials. I'm gonna show you how to use this palette, show you all the different looks you can create, and that's something I really want with my palette too. I wanted you to be able to create a bunch of different types of looks with my palette, and you can. I've done it. So to kind of start off the launch of my palette, starting tomorrow until Friday, I will be posting an eyeshadow tutorial with my palette. I just kind of wanted to start you off with having 4 different looks with my palette. When you do get the palette, you kind of have those looks to go off of, whether you want some inspiration or just to create those same looks all together. Like, I totally get it. So for tomorrow's video on Wednesday, it will be this eyeshadow look that I'm wearing right now. I used all of the neutral shades in the palette to kind of create this like neutral glam look. I love this look. I wear wear it all the time. I just think this look is so pretty and it would look amazing on everyone. So we're starting pretty simple with the neutral look, but I will definitely be doing some colorful looks. Don't you worry. I am going to be talking about and posting about my palette so dang much. So I hope you don't get sick of me and seeing my eyeball on my palette, but I worked really hard on this. I'm excited for you guys to have it and to create some looks with it. Also, based off of that, I do want to show you some color combo swatches just to give you some more inspiration of looks you can create, because I know that a lot of you, when you look at a palette, you're like, what do I do with this? And that's kind of one thing I wanted with my palette, the way I arranged the shades. I arranged the shades and I went back and forth so many times, like placing the little shades in different orders. It was ridiculous, but I really wanted you to look at this palette and I want your eyeball to jump around when you see it. And like my eye still jumps around when I see this, even though I've seen this palette for like 2 years now. I could have laid out this palette really nicely and had like all the neutrals together on one side, all the colors on one side, but I really want your brain and your eye to just be like, boom, boom. Ooh, that's a different color. Ooh, that's a fun color combo. That's how my brain works when I look at this palette, but I'm gonna give you a couple swatch color combos to kind of inspire you, so let's dive into that really quick. So here are all the colorful shades in the palette, kind of swatched in that rainbow, like I said. See how it's not like a true primary colored rainbow, but it definitely gives you that rainbow vibe, and I think it's so fun. And I think that looking at the shades in this way, it might make it easier to come up with some color combos. You can kind of look at it this way with doing more of the warmer shades with that Hollywood together, or playing with more of the cool tone shades, but again, the Hollywood shade, I swear it goes with everything. All right, then here are all the neutral shades together, swatched in a way that kind of makes the most sense to my brain, going lightest to darkest. So we have Bright, Champagne Problems, Bare, Basic, Schmoogala, Autumn, and Cold Brew. So again, you can do like a super natural, easy eye like that, or kind of do a deeper eye, but again, like this is my transition shade, this is my blending shade. Kind of use these however you want. I forgot to mention this too, but these first 4 shades in the palette, I put those there specifically to kind of make your perfect like everyday eyeshadow quad. So if you need like an easy everyday eyeshadow look, I recommend using these 4 shades together. So that's why I placed them that way. So I hope that swatching the shades in that way kind of made a little more sense to you, could kind of help you come up with some color combos that you want to do. But I feel like I've been talking for a while now, and I mean, that's kind of it for this video. Like I just wanted to show you the shades, talk about the palette. Like it's finally here, it's available now. I truly hope that you guys will love this palette. I cannot wait to see you guys using it and creating some looks. Again, don't forget the hashtag #SigmaXAngelaBright, and that's kind of it. So I will see you tomorrow for this eyeshadow tutorial.